The house was alive with laughter, music, and the clinking of glasses. Guests filled every corner, their faces glowing under the soft amber lights. Diana, the hostess, moved among them with a practiced smile, ensuring everyone was comfortable. Tonight, the house was supposed to celebrate her birthday, a day meant to honor her. But somehow, it felt like she was the hired help instead of the guest of honor. The party wasn't hers. Not really. Her husband, Victor, had invited his colleagues, old friends, and even a few neighbors Diana barely knew. They exchanged jokes and shared memories, most of which didn't include her. Diana had spent hours preparing every detail, from appetizers to floral arrangements, yet no one noticed her effort or presence. As she carried yet another tray of drinks, she overheard a comment from a guest near the dining table. "Is she Victor's wife? She looks more like the housekeeper." The words stung more than she cared to admit, but Diana pushed forward, pretending not to hear. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed the glasses down, her mind racing. Then came the moment she dreaded most. Victor called for everyone's attention, his booming voice silencing the room. With a grin that promised something grand, he held up a wrapped gift and said, "Happy birthday, Diana. Here's something to match your personality." Laughter erupted as he revealed a broom. "Now you've got your vehicle. Maybe you can fly away next time," he joked. The room erupted in laughter, but Diana stood frozen, her heart pounding. The humiliating gesture stole her breath, and she felt deeply betrayed. Diana had swallowed her pride for years, enduring Victor's subtle jabs and neglect. But tonight, something shifted inside her. A spark of rebellion flickered. What would she do next? Would she continue enduring the disrespect, or was this the moment she'd finally reclaim her life? If you've ever felt trapped or overlooked, this story will resonate with you. Don't miss what happens next as Diana makes a bold decision that changes her life forever. Subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share it with someone who needs to hear this inspiring story. Stay tuned for the next part. You won't want to miss it. The laughter faded into the background as Diana stood motionless, the broom clutched in her trembling hands. Her face burned with humiliation, but the ache in her chest was far worse. The man she had vowed to love and honor had once again reduced her to the punchline of his cruel joke. Around her, the guests continued laughing, clinking their glasses and whispering. Diana's mind raced, memories of countless moments like this flooding back. There were the times he dismissed her opinions in front of others, the sharp remarks disguised as teasing, and the countless nights he came home late, reeking of expensive cologne she didn't buy. But this was different. This public display of mockery was unbearable. She glanced at Victor, who was grinning, basking in the approval of his friends. He didn't even notice the tears pooling in her eyes. "Diana, are you just going to stand there?" Victor chuckled, his tone dripping with condescension. "At least put it to use." The room erupted in laughter again. Her chest tightened as the anger, humiliation, and sadness that had simmered for years boiled over. She wasn't just a joke to Victor. She was invisible. No one cared about the hours she had spent preparing this party. No one noticed her sacrifices. No one saw her. A glass tray slipped from her trembling hands, crashing onto the floor. The room fell silent as every pair of eyes turned to her. Diana's mother-in-law, Marlene, broke the silence with a sharp, disapproving tone. "Can't you do anything right, Diana?" The words hit like a slap, but Diana didn't shrink away this time. Her gaze darted to Victor, hoping for even the faintest sign of support. Instead, he smirked, his arms crossed as if enjoying the spectacle. Something inside her snapped. She wasn't just angry, she was done. Without a word, Diana knelt to pick up the shards of glass, her movements slow and deliberate. The tension in the room thickened, but no one dared speak. As she rose, her eyes locked on the dining table's centerpiece. An elaborate cake, Victor's pride and joy, custom-ordered for the occasion. The spark of rebellion flared. The broom in her hand suddenly felt heavier, like a weapon. Before she could stop herself, Diana swung the broom with all her strength. It connected with the cake, sending frosting and layers of sponge flying across the room. Gasps filled the air as the once perfect centerpiece collapsed into a sugary mess. The silence that followed was deafening. Victor froze, his expression shifting from smug amusement to blind rage. "What the hell are you doing? Are you crazy?" he shouted, storming toward her. But Diana didn't wait for his wrath. She turned on her heel, her adrenaline surging, and walked straight to the door. Victor's voice echoed behind her, but she didn't look back. The cool night air hit her face when she stepped outside, bringing an unexpected sense of freedom. Diana's heels clicked against the pavement as she hurried toward the nearest bus stop, her heart pounding. Her breath came in short gasps, but she didn't dare stop. She had no plan, no destination, only a desperate need to get as far away as possible. As she reached the stop, a bus pulled up, its doors hissing open. Without thinking, she climbed aboard and slumped into the nearest seat. Her hands shook as she stared out the window, the city lights blurring past her. The laughter, Broom, and cake all played on a loop in her mind. For a brief moment, she wondered, what have I done? But as the bus rolled farther away from the house, a new feeling began to take root, relief. Tears welled up in her eyes, but they weren't just from sadness this time. Beneath the pain and exhaustion was the faintest glimmer of hope. For the first time in years, she had taken a step, however small, towards standing up for herself. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, jarring her from her thoughts. She pulled it out and saw Victor's name flashing on the screen. Her stomach twisted, and for a moment, she considered answering. But then she remembered his smirk, laughter, and the countless times he'd belittled her. With trembling fingers, she declined the call and turned off her phone. The bus jolted to a stop near a small park, and Diana decided to leave. She needed to clear her head to figure out her next move. The crisp night air wrapped around her, and she pulled her coat tighter as she sat on a bench under a flickering street lamp. Out of instinct, she dialed the number of her oldest friend, Rachel, who had always been a source of comfort. The line rang twice before Rachel's concerned voice came through. "Diana? Are you okay?" "It's late." Diana's voice cracked as she replied, "I don't know what to do, Rachel. I left the house. I couldn't take it anymore." Rachel's tone softened. "Where are you? I'll come get you." "I think I'm near the park by your place," Diana said, glancing around. "Stay there. I'm on my way," Rachel replied without hesitation. Minutes felt like hours as Diana waited, her thoughts swirling. The weight of her decision loomed large, but so did the sense of possibility. When Rachel's car pulled up, Diana felt a wave of relief. Her friend rushed out and pulled her into a tight hug. "Come on," Rachel said gently, guiding her to the car. "You're staying with me tonight. We'll figure everything out in the morning." Back at Rachel's apartment, Diana curled up on the couch with a blanket. For the first time in years, she felt safe. But as the events of the evening replayed in her mind, she knew this was just the beginning. Leaving Victor was one thing, but building a new life would be a different challenge. Still, as she sipped the cup of tea Rachel handed her, Diana felt a spark of determination. She wasn't going back. Not ever. And no matter how difficult the road ahead might be, she was ready to face it. Diana woke the following day to birds chirping faintly outside Rachel's apartment. For a brief moment, she thought she was back in her own home, back in the place where she had spent years enduring Victor's cruelty. Then, the events of the previous night came rushing back. She sat up abruptly, her chest tightening as the memory of smashing the cake and fleeing the party replayed in her mind. Rachel's voice interrupted her thoughts. "Morning," she said softly, holding a mug of steaming coffee. "How are you feeling?" Diana sighed, taking the mug and wrapping her hands around it for warmth. "Lost, scared, but also free." Her voice wavered as if she couldn't believe the word had escaped her lips. Rachel sat down beside her, her expression serious. "You did something brave, Diana. Leaving that house and standing up for yourself. It's not easy. But now you need a plan." Diana nodded, her mind spinning with questions she didn't have answers to. Where would she live? How would she support herself? For so long, her life had revolved around Victor. The idea of starting over felt both exhilarating and paralyzing. "I don't even know where to begin," Diana admitted. Rachel placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "We'll figure it out together. First, let's focus on getting you a job. You're resourceful, Diana. You've been running that house for years. You have more skills than you realize. The words planted a tiny seed of confidence in Diana's heart. She spent the next few days at Rachel's kitchen table, poring over job listings and updating her sparse resume. It was daunting. She hadn't worked since she married Victor, and even before that, her experience was limited. Still, she pressed on, determined to build a new life. After countless applications and interviews, Diana landed a job at a local laundry service. The work was physically demanding, but it gave her structure and a sense of purpose. Each paycheck brought her one step closer to independence. She saved every dollar she could, refusing Rachel's offers of financial help, and eventually found a tiny studio apartment to rent. The apartment was far from glamorous. Cracked walls, creaky floors, and a leaky faucet, but it was a sanctuary to Diana. She spent her weekends scrubbing, painting, and decorating, transforming the space into something that felt like hers. It wasn't much, but it was hers, and that made all the difference. One evening, as Diana struggled to fix the leaky faucet in her kitchen, she felt frustrated. She had tried everything she could think of, but the steady drip persisted, a constant reminder of everything she couldn't control. Finally, she picked up her phone and called Rachel. "I need help," Diana admitted, her voice tinged with exhaustion. Rachel didn't hesitate. "I know just the person. A friend of mine, Ethan, is a contractor. He's great with stuff like this. I'll send him over tomorrow." The next day, Ethan arrived at Diana's apartment with a toolbox in hand and a friendly smile. He was tall and soft-spoken, with an air of calm that immediately put Diana at ease. As he assessed the faucet, he made small talk, asking about the apartment and how long she'd been living there. "Not long," Diana replied cautiously. "I'm starting over." Ethan nodded as if he understood. "Well, starting over can be tough," he said, tightening a wrench. "But it's also an opportunity to build something better." His words lingered in Diana's mind long after he fixed the faucet and left. Over the next few weeks, Ethan returned to help with other repairs, fixing a broken cabinet, patching a hole in the wall, and even painting the living room. Diana opened up more with each visit, sharing bits and pieces of her story. Ethan listened without judgment, his quiet encouragement helping her see her strength. He told her about his son, Max, a bright and curious 10-year-old who loved thinking with tools like his dad. Diana admired the way Ethan spoke about Max. The warmth in his voice starkly contrasts Victor's cold, dismissive tone. One afternoon, as Ethan patched a crack in the ceiling, he turned to Diana with a thoughtful expression. "Have you ever thought about going back to school?" The question caught her off guard. "School? I don't know. It's been so long." "It's never too late," Ethan said gently. "You're smart, Diana. You've got more potential than you give yourself credit for." The idea terrified her, but also sparked something deep inside, a desire to reclaim the parts of herself that Victor had tried to erase. That night, Diana began researching adult education programs. It was overwhelming, but the thought of learning something new, of building a future that was indeed her own, filled her with cautious optimism. Diana's journey was far from over. She still carried the scars of her past, but with each step she took, the weight on her shoulders grew lighter. And as she sat in her little apartment, surrounded by the fruits of her hard work, she began to believe that maybe, just maybe, she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. Diana sat at her kitchen table late one night, papers and brochures spread out before her. Adult education programs, financial aid options, and course schedules blurred, and I tried to understand everything. Her mind buzzed with doubts. What if I'm too old? What if I fail? What if I don't belong? But Ethan's words replayed in her mind. It's never too late. The next day, she boldly enrolled in a basic adult education program. Walking into the classroom for the first time was terrifying. She felt out of place among younger students and wondered if she had made a mistake. But as the weeks went by, something remarkable happened. Diana began to thrive. Her instructors were patient and encouraging, and for the first time in years, Diana felt seen, not as someone's wife or caretaker, but as an individual with her potential. She soaked up knowledge, pouring herself into her studies with a determination she didn't know she had. One evening, after a particularly challenging test, Diana found Ethan waiting outside her apartment. He had brought Max along, who was excitedly holding a bouquet of wildflowers. "These are for you," Max said shyly, handing her the flowers. "Dad said you're courageous." Diana blinked back tears as she accepted the bouquet. "Thank you, Max. That means a lot." Ethan smiled. "We're proud of you, Diana. You're doing something incredible." Their quiet support became a cornerstone of her journey. Ethan continued to help with minor repairs around her apartment, and Max's cheerful visits brought light to her days. Diana realized she was no longer just surviving. She was beginning to live. Months turned into a year, and Diana's confidence grew with every milestone. She completed her education program and began looking into vocational training, dreaming of a career where she could help others who had faced challenges like hers. But even as she moved forward, the shadows of her past lingered. Victor had been silent since the night she left, but Diana knew he wasn't gone for good. Part of her dreaded the day he might reappear, but another part wanted closure. She needed to confront the man who had belittled and controlled her for so long. While sorting through a box of old belongings one evening, Diana came across a photograph of herself and Victor from their early years together. In the picture, she was smiling, but the joy looked forced. Her eyes clouded with an unease she hadn't recognized. She stared at the photo for a long moment before picking up her phone and calling Ethan. "Do you think I should confront him?" she asked hesitantly. Ethan was quiet for a moment before replying. "Only if you're ready. Closure is important, but it's also about protecting yourself. If you decide to face him, I'll be there." Diana nodded, even though he couldn't see her. "I think I need to do this." The following week, Diana learned from a mutual acquaintance that Victor was working as a janitor at a restaurant downtown. The news surprised her. Victor, once so proud and boastful, had fallen far. With Ethan by her side, Diana decided to visit the restaurant. She wanted to see him, to put the past behind her finally. When they arrived, Diana spotted Victor sweeping the sidewalk outside. His once commanding posture was slumped, and a faded uniform had replaced his expensive suits. He looked up and froze when he saw her. "Diana," he said, his voice tinged with desperation. "I knew you'd come back. We can fix this. I've changed." Diana stood tall, her heart steady. "You haven't changed, Victor. You only say this because you think you can get something from me. I'm not here to fix anything. I'm here to move on." Victor's expression darkened. "You think you're better than me now? Don't forget where you came from." Diana's voice remained calm but firm. "I haven't forgotten, but I'm no longer the person you controlled. I've built a life for myself, one you'll never be part of." Victor's anger boiled over. "You were nothing without me," he shouted. "I gave you everything." Diana met his gaze, unflinching. "You gave me nothing but pain, and now I'm free." Turning her back on him, Diana walked away, her heart lighter than it had been in years. Ethan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder as they left. "You did the right thing," he said softly. For the first time, Diana felt genuinely free. The confrontation wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming her narrative. As she and Ethan walked away, she knew she had closed a chapter of her life that had haunted her for far too long. The sun streamed through Diana's modest apartment windows as she flipped through brochures for vocational training programs. Each glossy page represented a new possibility: culinary arts, healthcare, and social work. The choices felt endless, and Diana allowed herself to dream for the first time in years. "I want to do something meaningful," she told Ethan over dinner one evening. He had stopped by after work with Max, and the three were seated around the small kitchen table. "What do you feel most passionate about?" Ethan asked, his tone encouraging. Diana thought for a moment. "Helping others, especially women who've been through what I have. I want them to know it's never too late to start over." Ethan smiled. "That's a powerful goal, Diana, and you'd be incredible at it." With his support, Diana enrolled in a program for counseling and advocacy. The coursework was intense, but she poured her heart into every assignment. Her instructors quickly noticed her dedication, often commenting on her empathy and insight. One evening, as Diana reviewed case studies for a class, she came across a story about a woman who had escaped an abusive relationship. The woman's journey mirrored her own. and tears welled up in Diana's eyes as she realized how far she had come. The pain she had endured was no longer a weight pulling her down. It was now a source of strength, fueling her determination to make a difference. Diana began volunteering at a local shelter for women and children as the months passed. The work was challenging but deeply fulfilling. She listened to their stories, offered comfort, and shared her experiences when appropriate. For the first time, Diana felt she was exactly where she was meant to be. Diana's life was steadily transforming, but she hadn't forgotten those who had helped her along the way. One afternoon, an idea struck her as she prepared a meal for Ethan and Max. "What if we started something together?" she asked Ethan, setting down a plate of roasted vegetables. He raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Something like what?" "A foundation," she explained, her voice brimming with excitement. "We could support women who are trying to rebuild their lives. Offer resources, counseling, maybe even job training." Ethan's face lit up. "That's a fantastic idea, Diana. And with your experience and passion, it could rake an impact." They spent the next few weeks drafting plans for the foundation, which they called the Second Chances Initiative. Ethan used his connections in the construction industry to secure donations for the shelter's facilities, while Diana leveraged her growing network in the advocacy community. Together, they created a program that provided temporary housing, therapy, and vocational training for women seeking independence. The work brought them closer as a couple, and Diana fell in love with Ethan's quiet strength and unwavering support. Max, too, had become an integral part of her life, his playful energy bringing light to even the most challenging days. One evening, as they celebrated the grand opening of the foundation's first shelter, Ethan surprised Diana with a heartfelt speech. Standing before the gathered crowd, he spoke about her courage, resilience, and the inspiration she had become to so many. "Diana's story is one of hope," he said, his voice steady. "She's proof that no matter how dark things may seem, there's always a way to find the light. And I'm honored to stand beside her as she helps others find their way." As the audience applauded, Diana felt gratitude wash over her. She had come so far from the woman who had clutched a broom in humiliation, unsure of her worth. Now, she was a leader, a role model, and for the first time, truly loved. Later that night, as she and Ethan walked hand in hand through the quiet streets, he turned to her with a serious expression. "There's one more thing I want to ask you." Diana's heart fluttered as he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Opening it, he revealed a simple but elegant ring. "Will you marry me?" he asked softly. Tears filled Diana's eyes as she nodded, unable to speak. At that moment, surrounded by the life she had built and the people who had become her family, she knew she had found her forever. The days following Ethan's proposal were a whirlwind of emotions for Diana. She had never imagined finding love again, let alone building a new life filled with purpose and hope. The engagement wasn't just a promise of marriage, but a symbol of everything she had worked hard to achieve. Diana and Ethan decided on a small, intimate ceremony. The guest list included only close friends, colleagues from the foundation, and Max, who was thrilled to participate as the ring bearer. The wedding was held at a cozy garden venue decorated with simple wildflowers, symbolizing Diana's growth and resilience. As Diana walked down the aisle, her heart swelled with mixed emotions. She wasn't just walking toward Ethan. She was walking toward a future she had built with strength and determination. When she reached him, he took her hands and whispered, "You look beautiful." The ceremony was filled with tears and laughter, celebrating love and second chances. Rachel, who had been by Diana's side through her darkest moments, gave a heartfelt speech. "Diana has shown us all that it's never too late to rewrite your story," she said. "She's a testament to the power of perseverance and the strength of the human spirit." After the wedding, Diana and Ethan blended their lives seamlessly. Max, who had always been close to Diana, now called her Mom, a title that filled her heart with joy. Together, they began to envision an even bigger future, not just for their family but also for the foundation. The success of the Second Chances initiative inspired Diana and Ethan to dream bigger. The foundation had already helped dozens of women rebuild their lives, but they knew there was still much more to do. Late nights were spent brainstorming ways to expand their services, more shelters, partnerships with local businesses for job placements, and even a mentorship program. One day, Diana received a letter that left her speechless. It was from a woman named Teresa, who had been one of the first residents at the shelter. In the letter, Teresa wrote about how the program had changed her life, helping her gain custody of her children and secure a stable job. "You gave me hope when I had none," the letter read. "Because of you, my kids have a home, and I finally feel I can provide the life they deserve." The letter reaffirmed everything Diana had worked for. "This is why we do this," she told Ethan, her voice filled with emotion. With renewed determination, they launched a fundraising campaign to open a second shelter in a neighboring city. Diana took on a leadership role, giving speeches at community events and connecting with donors. Public speaking had never been her strength, but the passion behind her mission gave her confidence. The campaign succeeded, and the second shelter ran within a year. The new facility was more extensive, with classrooms for vocational training, therapy rooms, and a daycare center. Diana couldn't help but feel a swell of pride as she watched women and children walk through its doors, knowing they were beginning their journeys toward freedom and independence. Even as the foundation grew, Diana and Ethan remained grounded in their family life. Max adored his twin baby brothers, often showing them how to build simple projects with his tools. The family spent weekends together, exploring parks, having movie nights, and creating memories that Diana had once thought were out of reach. Max discussed an idea one evening as they sat around the dinner table. "What if we let some of the older kids from the shelter come over sometimes? They could hang out, play games, just be kids." Ethan and Diana exchanged a glance, their hearts swelling with pride. Max's suggestion was simple yet profound, a reminder that their family wasn't just about the four of them. It was about the community they were building together. They implemented Max's idea, inviting children from the shelter to participate in weekend activities. The laughter and joy that filled their home during those visits reminded Diana of how far she had come. What had once been a life of isolation and fear was now one of love, connection, and purpose. Diana's life had transformed in ways she never thought possible, but even the most beautiful journeys face unexpected storms. Diana stretched thin as the Second Chances initiative expanded to a third city. Between her responsibilities at the foundation, her family, and community events, the weight of her commitments began to take its toll. One evening, as Diana sat at her desk reviewing financial reports for the new shelter, Ethan entered the room with concern etched on his face. "Diana," he said softly, "you haven't stopped working since dinner. You're amazing at what you do, but you are everything." She looked up, exhaustion evident in her eyes. "I know, but there's so much at stake. Every dollar, every decision affects the lives of these women and their families." Ethan placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to carry this alone. Lean on the team you've built. They're here to help. And remember, our family needs you too." Diana nodded, but the guilt lingered. She didn't want to let anyone down, especially not the women who relied on the foundation. Despite her best efforts, cracks began to show. She missed Max's school play, arrived late to a family dinner, and often stayed up in the early morning, pushing herself to the brink. Diana suddenly felt lightheaded one night while Hose the room spun, and before she knew it, she collapsed. Gasps filled the hall as Ethan rushed to her side, calling for help. Diana woke hours later in a hospital bed, Ethan sitting beside her, his face a mixture of relief and worry. "You're overworking yourself," he said firmly. "This isn't just about you anymore, Diana. You have a family, a team, and people who care about you. How can you care for anyone else if you don't care for yourself?" His words struck a chord. Diana realized she had been so focused on helping others that she had neglected her well-being. With Ethan's support, she decided to delegate more responsibilities at the foundation and take a step back to focus on her health and family. Months later, Diana stood before a packed audience at the grand opening of the foundation's third shelter. The building was a beacon of hope, with brightly painted walls, a welcoming garden, and rooms designed to inspire healing and growth. Diana felt a mix of pride and humility as she took the podium. "Years ago, I was a woman who felt invisible," she began, her voice steady. "I lived in the shadows of fear, humiliation, and control. But through the kindness of friends, the strength I found within myself, and the support of this incredible community, I discovered that it's never too late to start over. She paused, her eyes scanning the room. This shelter isn't just a building. It's a promise that no one has to face their struggles alone. It's where second chances aren't just given. They're built together. The audience erupted in applause, and as Diana stepped down from the stage, she was greeted by women who had benefited from the foundation's work. They hugged her, their gratitude evident in their eyes. Holding a young child's hand, one woman said, "Because of you, my daughter and I have a future. Thank you." Diana's heart swelled with emotion. This was her legacy, not just the shelters or the programs, but the lives she had touched and the hope she had inspired. As the event wound down, Ethan joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Max played nearby with his younger brothers, his laughter ringing. "You've built something incredible, Diana," Ethan said. "And I know this is just the beginning." She smiled, leaning into him. "I couldn't have done it without you." Without all of this, they watched the families, children, and volunteers gather together to celebrate. Diana knew that while her journey had been filled with pain and challenges, it had also led her to a life filled with love, purpose, and hope. She had turned her scars into strength, her struggles into stepping stones, and her pain into power. Diana felt a profound sense of peace as the sun set over the new shelter. The shadows of her past had finally given way to a brighter future, not just for her, but for all the lives she continued to touch. Diana's journey is a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the power of second chances. Her story reminds us that no matter how difficult the past, the future is ours to shape. If her story inspired you, consider sharing it with others who might need some hope. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories about transformation, resilience, and love. See you in the next chapter of hope.